In a remote village, there lived a woodcutter with his family. Every morning, he would go to the forest to chop wood and sell it in the market for their daily sustenance. One day, as he raised his axe to cut a tree, a genie with a white beard appeared and said, "You've disturbed us by being here. Stop cutting these trees and leave this forest." The woodcutter, worried, asked, "But how will my family and I eat?" The genie, after contemplating, looked at him kindly and said, "I will compensate you for the wood." The woodcutter, puzzled, asked, "And how will you compensate me? I don't see anything with you." The genie replied, "Look behind you." When the woodcutter turned around, he saw a sheep, half white and half yellow. The woodcutter, astonished, said, "It's just a sheep." The genie responded, "If you milk it from the white side, you will have plenty of milk, and from the yellow side, you will have plenty of butter. It will never run out. Now take it and leave, and I don't want to see you here again." The woodcutter took the sheep home and told his wife the story, asking her to milk the sheep. When she did, milk flowed from the white side and butter from the yellow side. The woodcutter was overjoyed, filled 2 jars, one with milk and the other with butter, and sold them in the market. Over time, he bought a donkey full of blessings, and his wealth increased until he had 2, then 3 donkeys. His envious neighbor became suspicious of the woodcutter's newfound wealth and ordered his wife to investigate. The neighbor's wife visited the woodcutter's house, where the woodcutter's wife welcomed her and gave her milk and butter. The envious wife noticed the strange sheep. That night, the neighbor sneaked in and stole the sheep, replacing it with an ordinary one. The next morning, when the woodcutter's wife tried to milk the sheep, she only got a small amount of milk. Realizing that the sheep had been stolen, the woodcutter went to the judge to complain about his neighbor, but the judge didn't believe him. The woodcutter returned home sad, and after his money ran out, he returned to the forest. The genie appeared again, but this time angry, saying, "Why have you returned? Didn't we agree that you would stay away?" The woodcutter, desperate, replied, "My neighbor stole the sheep you gave me." The genie thought again and handed him a brass measure, saying, "If you fill it with pebbles, they will turn into silver, but this time be careful not to lose it." The woodcutter took the measure home, and soon his family was living in luxury again. But the envious neighbor didn't stop spying on the woodcutter. When he learned about the measure, he went to the governor and told him that the woodcutter had found a treasure. The governor summoned the woodcutter and forced him to reveal the secret. The woodcutter was compelled to disclose the measure. The governor took the measure and decided to reward the envious neighbor. However, realizing the neighbor's wickedness, the governor refused to reward him and dismissed him harshly. The neighbor returned home, disappointed, and regretted his greed. As for the woodcutter, he continued his life until he returned to the forest once more. This time, the genie gave him a wooden box in which the dewdrops would turn into diamonds, warning him never to return again. The woodcutter lowered his head and said, "Next time, I'll sell my house and leave this village. There's no good in living next to such a wicked neighbor." He then returned home and told his wife what had happened. The next morning, they found 3 diamonds of unparalleled beauty. The woodcutter took one, sold it to a prominent jeweler, and returned with a great sum of money. Despite his efforts to conceal his newfound wealth, the neighbor's wife sensed a change in their circumstances and began urging her husband to discover their secret. The king heard about the diamonds appearing in the market and sought to uncover their source, but the woodcutter was cautious, selling the diamonds in different cities and burying the money. Despite the neighbor's continuous efforts, he couldn't uncover the secret. One night, after the woodcutter's family had entertained some guests, a crow flew by, spotted the jewels in a box, stole one, and flew away. The neighbor's wife, watching from her window, saw what happened and followed the bird to its nest. When she reached inside, she found the diamond and gasped, saying, "My neighbor has a treasure of diamonds, and I had no idea. Where did he get all this from?" But when she returned home, she found nothing in the garden. Suddenly, she saw the king's entourage stop in front of the woodcutter's house, and she exclaimed, "Damn it! The king beat us to it!" The governor questioned the woodcutter about the diamonds, but the woodcutter denied knowing anything about them, insisting he was just a poor man who earned his living by chopping wood. The guard searched his house and found nothing but a small pouch of coins. No one noticed the old wooden box. The king, thinking his spies must have been mistaken, was about to leave when a woman approached him and said, "If you're looking for the diamonds, you'll find them with the woodcutter. He hides them in the forest." The king asked her how he could be sure she was telling the truth. She pulled a diamond from her pocket and replied, "I found this in the forest." The king ordered the woodcutter, his wife, and their children to be brought to the forest. He threatened the woodcutter, saying that if he didn't reveal the location of the diamonds, they would be thrown into a dark prison where they would never see the light again. The woodcutter's wife wept and told the king everything that had happened because of the genie, the sheep that produced butter and milk, the scale that turned pebbles into silver, and the dew that became diamonds in the wooden box. She explained that their neighbors had tricked the woodcutter into leaving their home unguarded so they could steal the enchanted box. The king listened in amazement and then asked, "Where are the sheep and the scale now?" She answered, "The neighbor stole the sheep, and the scale is with the governor." The king promised that if her story was true, they would be released, but warned her of dire consequences if she was lying. Meanwhile, the greedy neighbor, finding the woodcutter's house empty, searched it until she discovered the box with 3 large diamonds. Not content with that, she also took the clothes she fancied. As she left, the king's soldiers caught her and demanded she show them what she had stolen. She tried to flee, saying, "Now I have enough, and I don't need a ruined house or my foolish husband." But she stumbled and was captured. Brought before the king, she initially denied everything. But after being beaten, she confessed that she had been spying on the woodcutter because he always returned from the forest with magical items that brought him great wealth. The king, realizing the truth, ordered the release of the woodcutter's family and the return of the stolen items. He sent his soldiers to retrieve the sheep and warned the neighbor that she would be closely watched. The king, however, became greedy and hoarded the magical items for himself, not thanking God for the blessings. Months later, the woodcutter's wealth ran out, and his family began to starve. Desperate, he returned to the forest and begged the genie for forgiveness. The genie, angered by the king's greed, gave the woodcutter a magical stick. If the woodcutter asked it for blessings, it would grant them, but if asked a second time, it would beat the person mercilessly. The woodcutter cleverly gave the stick to the king, who, when alone, asked it for blessings. The stick began to beat him severely, and the genie appeared, demanding the king return everything he had taken from the woodcutter. Humbled and in pain, the king agreed and promised to return all the stolen items and never to be greedy again. The woodcutter, now wealthy again, moved to a big city, leaving behind his greedy neighbors and the corrupt governor to regret their actions. They realized that their envy and greed had only brought them misery, and they were left with nothing. The king, learning a harsh lesson, vowed to rule justly, while the woodcutter lived out the rest of his days in peace and prosperity, far from the troubles of his past. Don't just watch, become part of our family. Subscribe now